This is SportsCentre.
Hey, I'm Reagan Seaban, filling in for Marissa Roberto, and this is Digital SportsCentre presented by Montana's Barbecue and Bar. And we are at the espnW Summit Canada at the Evergreen Brickworks in Toronto. Don't worry, we will have plenty of interviews throughout the show, but we got to start on the ice because the 2025 NHL season has officially come to an end as the Panthers have won their second Stanley Cup in as many seasons. While a lot of the attention is on Florida, we can't help but look at the losing side and wonder what's next for Edmonton because where they go from here is very intriguing. The first decision they're going to have to make is what to do with Evan Bouchard, who is set to be a restricted free agent on July 1st. And considering how well he's played in the past few seasons, especially in the playoffs, the Oilers would love to have him back. But it's the cost of a new Bouchard deal that would make things tricky, when considering what the other top defensemen have signed for in the past few seasons. However, the fact that the cap is going up could help them. But the cost of keeping Bouchard won't be cheap. It's important that Edmonton doesn't spend too heavily this offseason, as they have an extension for Connor McDavid looming. And if you thought Bouchard's potential deal would be pricey, well then buckle up when it comes to McDavid. When his last extension kicked in during the 2018-2019 season, he took up more than 15% of Edmonton's salary cap. And if he does the same thing this time around, he'll be making more than $16 million in 2027. But keep in mind that McDavid signed his initial extension in 2017. And since signing, he has a ton of accolades. I mean, just look at this trophy case. So if anything, his cap percentage should only go up. And with all these contract issues, Edmonton will still have to make a decision on their goalies. After these two playoff runs, it doesn't seem like they can get it done with the tandem of Skinner and Pickard. But considering how much money they're going to have to spend on keeping their top guys, they might not have a ton of options when it comes to goaltending. In short, this is going to be a big offseason for Edmonton. And we'll see how they approach things in the coming weeks. Now joined with Toronto Tempo General Manager Monica Wright. Rogers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you've been given the keys to the newest franchise in the WNBA. How has that process been going for you so far?
Yeah, it's been going great. A lot of work to do we have some time as well with tip-off being in 2026, but everything has been going really great. I'm really excited about just signing players that can really enjoy just the sports industry here in Toronto and in Canada. Everyone here has been really warm and welcoming and really excited about the tempo so far.
Absolutely. And other than the people, what excites you, the most about Toronto?
For me personally, it's the food. I know we chatted about it briefly, but just so many different cultures here, so many different restaurants to explore, so many different tastes, and I really enjoy being able to explore that in the city. It's like a way of exploring the city, and then the sports culture here is just really deep rooted, and they're loyal, and so these knowledgeable fans and them getting to know our players and our players' stories really excites me as well.
Absolutely. So you are a two-time WNBA champion. You were just the assistant general manager of the Mercury. So how have you used your experience as a player and being such a high draft pick to the executive side of the job now too?
Yeah, great question. When I was a player, the league was in a different place. We had teams in Tulsa and we were flying Southwest and staying at Holiday Inns, and the league has evolved now, and I think players have just gotten so much more specialized. They just are playing at a different level. So I pull on my experience from a champion as a player every single day. I believe that you have to indoctrinate winning habits into the culture of the program and the franchise that you're building, and so I look forward to just bringing on people, staff and players included, that are going to be about those winning habits as well.
Absolutely. And what is one thing that you want Toronto fans to know about the Toronto Tempo heading into the next season?
Yeah, I think, in 2026, they can expect to see a product on the floor that's going to be, number one, reflective of this Canadian culture, which, they're going to work hard, they're going to play hard, they're going to play the game the right way, and they're going to be in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck in 2026.
Thanks for having me.
Now joined by Sarah Spain. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you've been at this summit before. How much have you seen this conference grow as well as women in sports over the last 2 years?
I mean, it's literally insane. I've been doing this for 15 years on the U.S. side, but this is only year 3 in Canada. And the first year when I got here, there was a little bit of like an apologetic sort of like, okay, we're catching up. We don't really have a lot of pro-women's sports. We're really enthusiastic about it, but we got work to do. And then the next year, it's like, okay, well, now we've got Project 8 turning into the NSL, and that's going to launch soon. And we went from hosting Exhibition WNBA to getting awarded our own team. We've got the PWHL in season 2, and I'm like, okay, Canada, like we just went like this, and now we're caught up.
No, absolutely. It's been incredible. But what do you think the next step is also for the growth of women's sports?
I was talking to Diana Matheson about this, who started the NSL, and one of the things I find most fascinating in the U.S. is in different markets, how much they do or do not integrate women's sports into their everyday conversation. Because what we do on the men's side is give you all the stakes, stats, stories, and stars that you need to care about the game that you're watching and come back for the next one. And on the women's side, oftentimes it's a highlight here or a highlight there. Maybe we'll pop in for the start of the season and then pop back when somebody wins it all. But all that conversation and context and nuance in the middle is really what serves fans and allows them to care about what they're watching and really get invested, especially in women's sports where there isn't the same history and nostalgia as the men's leagues that have been around for 100 plus years. Like, you have to give them the information that they don't have just as institutional knowledge. And so talking to Diana about how the NSL is done here, it was really interested in whether Canadian established media is given those highlights alongside the NHL and other things, or if there's still work to be done in that space.
100%. And is there a recent moment as well in women's sports that made you think, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing?
I think the jump in interest in the WNBA is part of it, and a lot of people will call it the Caitlin Clark effect, and that is a huge part of it. But also, Caitlin Clark is like a match that you threw on a bonfire. If all of that wood hadn't been gathered over 20 plus years, when you threw that match, it would be a really small fire. And instead it's blazing because of all the work of the media that have been pushing for it for years, of all the players that came before her and established the league as something great. And so for me, having people finally get what I've been preaching for 20 years of my career, that it's not the product that's the problem, it's the advertising, the marketing, the conversation, the media coverage, BS patriarchal ideas about the spaces women should be in or where they belong. Like, all of that has to keep progressing and evolving and moving along to get us to the space we are now, where everyone's like, oh, why haven't I been watching this all along?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being a role model in the industry, and thank you so much for joining us on our show as well.
Thanks for allowing me in here, Canada. I realize it's a tough time to welcome Americans.
Now joined by Sam Rapoport. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you started growing the game of football for women 20 years ago. Did you ever think that you would be in the position you are now?
Not growing up, no, because I think when girls were growing up, especially in Canada where I had no connections to the sport of football, the NFL whatsoever, I didn't dream it because no one was in that position, right?
Yeah.
You got to see it to be it. And so 10 years ago when I was standing on the sidelines of an NFL game, I decided that I wanted to be the one to change it and bring more women onto the real football side, the coaching, the scouting, the officiating, so the sport could be better represented by its fan base.
Absolutely. And from when you started, where have you seen the growth of women in football to today?
So we started 10 years ago, and we had pretty much 0 women working in coaching, and we had about 2 or 3 women working on the scouting side. Fast forward now with an intentional effort, which is the NFL Women's Forum, which is a program I created. We now have 15 women in full-time coaching roles in the NFL, which is more than any male professional sports league in the world, which is great. And we now have women on the scouting teams of every single NFL team. So we've gone from zeros across the board to almost ubiquity in scouting and close to that in coaching. But we're just getting started. This is just scratching the surface.
No, and it's so incredible to hear that as well. But what do you think is next for women in football as well?
I think we need to go from 1 or 2 in the room to half of the room. We make up half the population, we make up half of the NFL's fan base, so why aren't we making up half the staffs? It means that people aren't looking at the entire population to hire.
Yeah.
So I'm way less interested in the first female GM and head coach. It'll be great when it happens, but I'm way more interested in the ubiquity of women in the pipeline and underrepresented folks in the pipeline, so the NFL and other sports can get the best talent. And that's what this is all about. It's not really about women, it's about underrepresentation.
Yeah.
And in considering everyone.
We are slowly but surely getting there. And then my last final question is, if you could give yourself a piece of advice from when you started in the industry, what would you tell your younger self?
I tell my younger self that most of the advice that people give to women coming up in sports work really well for men and don't really work well for women.
Yeah.
And so I am not a fan of fake it till you make it or be yourself or any of those things. I think those work really well for men because they are the default in sports. But I think that type of advice leads to the creation of even the word imposter syndrome, which makes us feel like we don't belong. And we absolutely do. We just show up in a different way and we come at it a different way. So I would tell her to ignore that advice because we don't really understand what be yourself means.
Yeah.
That doesn't really make sense to a queer person or women of color or things like that because we are not the default. And so I would tell her to work on what that means at a younger age and what it means to show up authentically as yourself when it might not always be safe.
Oh, the future is so bright. Thank you so much for helping us grow the game of football with women, and thank you for joining us on TSN as well.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a special day at the espnW Summit in Canada. We talked to some really cool people. Thank you so much to the guests that joined us today. Luca will be filling in for Marissa tomorrow, and that's all for today. Have a good one.